Connecting is a human need. Babies need love and attention in order to thrive, but so do children and adults. Today's special episode with Dr. Susan Eirich is all about connecting and the importance of that, especially with nature. Listen to her stories about Bluebell the buffalo, Bramble the bear, and the wolf who started it all, Earthfire. With degrees in biology and psychology, as well as having lived with rescued wild animals for a quarter century, Dr. Susan Eirich is uniquely qualified to offer creative and essential perspectives to help solve the problems of our time of connecting with others and with nature. Over 20 years ago, Susan founded Earthfire Institute, a wildlife sanctuary, rehabilitation center, and retreat destination located on 120 acres just west of the Grand Teton National Park. Susan has taught at universities around the world, worked as a psychologist in maximum security prisons, developed a university counseling center, directed a nature conservancy preserve, and spent time with the peoples of remote corners of Nepal, the Northwest Territories, and the Amazon rainforest, always seeking to see through others' eyes. Susan is a very special guest. She's one of the most peaceful people I've ever met in my life. She's amazing, and her stories are going to touch you. I can't wait for you to hear this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Mary Jo Tinlin from the Teaching Your Toddler Show. Today we have a great guest. I'm so excited to talk to Dr. Susan Eirich. She is going to talk to us about connecting with nature and things like that. But first, I would love to have Susan tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm not sure how to talk about myself. Um,
Tell us about your institute and about how you got there, because I understand in your background you were doing work in prisons, and now you
yeah,
work outside, which to me seems like a completely opposite thing. So, how did that happen?
so I've always loved animals and nature as long as I could remember, and as long as I could come into consciousness. And so I actually worked at a nature center for a while. But I also really liked, you often hear, well, I like animals better than people. Well, actually, I like both. And I feel like we humans are having a really hard time of it. I think
Mm.
being human is hard
This
to
is,
begin with.
mhm.
Um, and so I got a degree in psychology as well, which I loved. And I worked in the prisons, which I loved. It felt like being a light in the darkness
Oh.
because I would actually listen. And they were
Mhm.
so grateful to have someone actually listen. The work was wonderful, but then someone invited me to raise wolf puppies. And I don't know about you, but it seemed to me that if someone invites you to raise wolf puppies, you just drop everything,
Oh my
which I
gosh.
did, which
Yeah,
I did.
I would assume that's like the dog puppies, and I can completely
Oh,
relate.
much
Yes.
worse. I, I love all animals. I love dogs equally to wolves. Um, but wolf puppies are another dimension. The passion with which they approach life, the passion, the vibrancy, the depth of connection, the emotionality. It's like dogs on steroids.
Wow. Is it because
Um,
they're just, I mean, we always say dogs are pack animals. It's better to have two dogs. And I mean, I'm assuming with wolves, it's just that much more, right? They have to be in a group.
it's the connection is total survival. Also, again, domestic animals are I don't want to say as good as because of course they are. Um, I love them all equally, but we've dumbed them down
Hmm.
with the
Yeah.
breeding. The brains are like one third smaller. Our
Oh,
dogs.
oh.
A lot of that is in the sensory capacity, but still. And we've also kept them as juvenile, so don't they never really fully grow up to become independent. But be that as it may, the connection with the wolf puppies was so strong, and my sense and the connection through them to what nature has to offer, all wild beings, um, said I can't keep this for myself. It's too
Mhm.
beautiful. It's too
Mhm.
powerful. I have to share it with my fellow humans, which is why. And one of the wolf puppies was named Earthfire, and
Mhm.
that's why I named it. She was a Earth Mother wolf. She'd try to nurture anything, and the puppies didn't have to be her own. So that's how I got started originally. I said I have to share who these animals are.
Mhm.
And that's basically not a biological thing. It's not this is what wolves eat, etc. It's heart-based, energetic connection between, in that case, me and another living being. But then I realized that's what was really interesting was then when I met my partner and he trained animals for movies, all with love and reward. So when I started Earthfire, he began bringing on his animals, which were bears and mountain lions, etc. And I realized that that connection is there with everything,
Hmm.
with every single species. And it's different. Every animal is individual. Like, dogs are individual, cats are individual, bears are individual, wolves are individual. So you can make a deeper connection with some than others.
Mhm.
But the capacity for a profound connection is there.
And
And
so you all
that opens
started the Earthfire Institute in Idaho, yes?
Yes. Well, I'm on the borderline between Idaho and Wyoming, right next to Grand Teton National Park.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you kind of probably move back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I live in Kansas City, so I know what that's like. Kansas City and Kansas, Missouri.
Yeah.
Not nearly as beautiful though, but so tell us a little bit about the Institute.
So when I founded it, I really wanted to, it's the animals who come here, live here for life, can never be released. We do rehabilitation as well, but because of the state laws, that's somewhat limited. So when we can bring an animal in, rehabilitate it and release it, we do. But mostly the animals stay here for life. And so number one priority is to give them the absolute best life we can if they're going to be in captivity. And the second is to have their lives be meaningful in human terms. And actually, some people would say on their terms, um, because they've learned they like people. The animals here actually want to meet people. I'm very careful about it. We're not a zoo. We don't have tons of people coming through. It's always small groups so that there's a chance for the animals and humans to actually interact and meet one another. And so what was so important to me about Earthfire is to touch our human hearts and expand our awareness of what's possible, that these are not just a wolf or a bear, but they're unique beings, and the incredible qualities of each species, of the bearness or the wolfness or the cougarness or the porcupineness, if you will. Because the animals we have are all native to our Rocky Mountain area. So we also have porcupines, foxes, bison, etc. And it's the same with all of them. You can make a connection with all of them. If you connect with the porcupine, it's in a porcupine way, mind you. They're very stubborn and also quite emotional. And never, ever, ever try to take a juicy pear away from a porcupine.
Oh,
Uh, so basically, I started the Institute in order to help us humans and animals, wild animals, connect in a way that is not common and usual, so that we begin to both our lives are vastly enriched by knowing the quality of the beings that are on this earth with us. And we also hopefully move to safe habitat for them. So that's
I'm
the fundamental goal.
that is fascinating. And I love how you have the bareness and the cougarness. I'd love to hear more about that. But when you say that makes their life meaningful, how do you define that or how is that defined?
Well, there you get into something that's a little bit more touchy. Um, they really like interacting with humans. They like it. They come up to you. They show off for you. All you have to look at is one of the videos of our bears splashing in the pool when he has an audience, quite different from when he doesn't. So that the capacity here, because of the deep respect and connection that we have with them, they now understand on some level, on their own level, a porcupine way or a bear way, whatever, that a connection with humans is possible. And then interesting things happen. Interesting things in terms of insights, in terms of healings. We've had amazing healings where an animal has received healing, energy healing from a human and been healed. There's a video online that shows that called Energy Healing Wolf, where a wolf who was paralyzed, not semi-paralyzed, she had the equivalent of epilepsy and was completely healed from energy healing. And you see it. So that part's not so touchy. It's that because you can see it. And I have the medical records and the medical records of how a bear responded to this kind of work also, because wild animals are incredibly sensitive to energy. They have to be to
Mm-hmm.
survive. And so often Western medicine is like a hammer, and they're very responsive to the gentler energy medicine. And then they're grateful. Just like a whale coming to thank someone who's disentangled them. There's a capacity for gratitude. There's a possibility of us having genuine community with wildlife. They are grateful. And most of us will realize that animals are curious about us. They're afraid for good reason. But if they're not afraid, if you sit quietly in the woods, they'll start to come. They can't help it because they're fascinated, just as we are. So we want to connect. If
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand that I wouldn't say it's safe to connect, because sometimes it isn't. So you have to use your senses about you. But altogether, the way I see it is that life recognizes life. We're
Mm-hmm.
fascinated by life. We're fascinated by each other when we feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we have the capacity to do is have the animals feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can have this type of interaction when it's more than just warehousing them and giving them
Mm-hmm. And
all
that
the stuff.
differentiates you from the wild, right? Like, so people shouldn't
Yeah.
be going out and trying to communicate with a bear in the wild because
I wouldn't
they don't
recommend
feel
petting a
safe out there,
bison.
right?
No, I wouldn't recommend petting a bison in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
But bluebell or bison loves it.
Aw.
But again, it's it's because she's here. So we can keep. So I guess my long answer is, because they're safe, aspects can be brought out in them
Mm-hmm.
and expressed in them as well as us that is possible in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never good in my mind to have an animal in captivity.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is, then you do the best you can to make it meaningful for everybody. And that meaning the animals and the people. And for them to act as ambassadors, which also is important. Like, oh my God, I didn't know a bear could be so gentle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, this bison is desperate to have their back scratched. Um, or yeah, so it's so in the larger sense, they're acting as ambassadors for their species in order. So I never let a visit go without talking about conservation and saving land.
Mm-hmm.
So the animals here are an emotional connection to their species. We need to save land for this animal, that animal, etc., plus the larger reason for saving habitat
Mm-hmm.
for them. So they act as ambassadors for their species. So that's a purpose, which they may or may not understand, but they do understand the joys of being able to interact with humans. We have a completely ridiculous wolf, and I mean ridiculous in the best possible sense. Sometimes just this is a wolf wants to be picked up and carried back.
Oh, like a little kid.
So so it brings elements out in them that they can't express in the wild, because in the wild, survival is so paramount.
Right, right. That's the number one priority. Yeah.
Yeah, so other elements of them can develop and express themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, safety is paramount for all of us. That's why we're scared of animals. We don't understand who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Be a
Mm-hmm.
lot less reason to be scared if we understood them and could read them. This
Right.
one's safe, this one isn't, this one's safe now and won't be later. Um,
I'm curious about the energy. I'm tracking with what you're talking about, and I'm very actually just recently became very interested in this whole like idea of just our molecules have they hold energy, and I believe our health is based on our energy and all of those things. I believe that, but how can you sort of explain this to someone who may not understand those kinds of things like energy fields and things?
if they have a dog or a cat, they're instinctively reading them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
without realizing it. It's nothing more mysterious than that. And it's and we're taught not to know what it is and not understand it. Hardcore science as opposed to good science in my mind. um, but we all have that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it? Tune into why is it that you feel good when you're gardening? Why is it that when you're upset, you go to the woods?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
So if you start questioning those things, you tune into that energy quality very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, and that's what I would love to continue to talk about as because the notes I got for the show prep were about slowing down and to tune in. And so it goes into kind of what we're talking about there. I was thinking about that the other day. My son took our dog to the dog park, and I just realized as I walked in the house, the energy was different in the house because the dog's not here, right? Like it
Right.
does feel different when there's another creature in the house, if it's a person or a dog or whatever, but I could tell the
Right.
difference in the energy. Yeah. So you have some ways to sort of slow down and tune in for people that because they probably can't come out to Idaho, maybe some can, but for people that can't, what are ways that they are able to slow down with themselves and with their families?
Hard to do alone without support because everything around us is so frenetic,
Mm,
but you can. Um, they're the standard ways of meditation, etc., but that's not for everyone. Connecting with any form of nature, any form of living being, spending time to breathe deep and just connect with your cat, your dog, the tree encased in cement outside your house in a city. But I do something called story sharing, where I invite people to online to share in a group where it's very um, private, in a sense everyone's safe to share stories of connections they had. And it's surprising how many stories I get about people with trees in the
mm,
city because that's all there is,
hmm.
and how they feel about the trees and the trees. That's why I came up with the encased in cement, how they make a connection with that tree and follow its growth, etc. It's a sitting down, it's allowing time.
Mm,
Things can happen like sometimes serendipitously without time. It just look like some magic moments, which are incredibly precious and should be respected and looked at and explored and used. But mostly it's just allow yourself to have time. And there's wonder absolutely everywhere. If you have a little window box in the middle of a city, that soil is teeming with life, which you can look at and begin to drawn into the wonder of the little beings that are in the soil or the plants that are growing. Um, you can. There was a gentleman who was a hardcore scientist who had a goldfish. Well, I think it was his wife's or so. And then he was alone, and he would come home, and he would notice that the goldfish would come towards the side that he was repeatedly. And it began to shift his understanding that goldfish wanted company. And we now know much more about fish. There are many wonderful books out about the capacity of fish as well. Um, for myself, when I first moved out west because I wanted to live in the in wild land, I had a job in Flagstaff as a counselor, and they put me in this little cubicle, like a little cement cubicle, and a tiny little window way above my head. I felt like I was totally encased, and I couldn't stand it. So I bought a little goldfish, a bowl and a goldfish, and the goldfish came with a plant. And unbeknownst to me, the plant came with a snail.
Oh.
And sitting there watching the goldfish, trying to connect to something to do with nature in between client sessions, I would watch the snail. And he would go extend his foot, and then he would go out across the bottom, and he'd come out on the side and up. And then, where the water beats air, the attention bond, and he would extend his foot, and he would go across the top of the edge of the water, right to the middle of the bowl, and he'd pull his little foot in. They'd glide, paraglide ever so gently down. They'd do it again and again and again. It's, I wrote a book of animal stories, and the last story is about that snail, about the life is a celebration.
Simple. Yeah.
Yes, when we make such a mistake by making everything complicated when
Mhm.
it's so the old adage is just true that connecting with anything like that brings joy, brings expansion, gives deeper breath, improves your immune system, makes you happier, and it's so simple. And we don't
Wow.
understand that.
Oh.
Connecting with any, so to go back, connecting with any living being because it's living, because it has the same life, fundamental life force that exists in anything living. Any of it is a source for connection, which immediately calms us to begin with, that we're connecting instead of isolated.
Mhm.
Um, Interesting nonverbal information, it just calms us and we begin to feel a sense of companionship. So we're connected, we're less alone. We begin to see the wonder that, your program is about toddlers originally, and the total wonder with the way they approach everything, to join in with that, support it in
Mhm.
every way you can, and keep it for yourself
Mhm.
because there's wonder absolutely everywhere.
Yeah. And one of the episodes that we did that we recorded talked about when you're engaging in that play with your child, it actually is developing your brain as well as
Yeah,
their brain. So it's in this context, we're talking about more of that energy and connection, but it's mutually beneficial, right? Like for
absolutely.
both people, mom and child
Yes.
or parents, dad and mom, whatever. Yeah.
Don't deprive yourself of that by letting your kid grow up on a device.
Oh my goodness. I know.
Don't
I was thinking
deprive
about that.
yourself.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I thought, if someone was struggling with their child not being interested in anything but that device, could you, like you're saying, introduce something like a goldfish or even just a snail or something for them to have
To the
that
park.
connection to?
Go to the park.
Mm-hmm.
And
The
maybe
park,
go to the
right?
same place in the park every same time. So you start to develop a sense of familiarity and safety in
Mm-hmm.
home. Um, because a sense of safety in home is primary too. And as you get familiar with the place, it feels like home. That's where you would
Mm-hmm.
race to if you got lost or something. You try to go back to that place in the park because that's safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that.
And the trouble with the devices is they're addictive because the basis of addiction is giving us the illusion of the thing that we're looking for.
Mm. That's well
And so
said. Yeah.
it gives us the illusion of connection, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
actually nourish us. And so we're desperate and empty and lonely and addicted. But when you connect with any living being, that's not an illusion. That's a real nourishing of the brain, of the body, of the immune system, of everything. And it's such a joy to be connected with other living creatures.
Yes.
You wander around constantly in a sense of companionship and interaction.
Yeah, and you think about even like just having dinner with someone or together as a family, right? That connection and just the energy together, that feeling. I think sometimes, like you were saying, people have just lost that, and even don't crave it necessarily. They're craving that fake connection that they
We
get
actually
from.
crave it, but don't know it.
Hmm. Hmm.
We
Yeah.
think we're getting it, but we
Hmm.
don't know what we're missing, which is the biggest tragedy.
Hmm. Yeah. What would you say to somebody if they say, "Well, I'm an introvert, whatever." Like how does that relate?
Not at all. That's easy to say.
Yeah, okay.
Introverts connect to animals easily,
Yes,
for example. And
right.
you've talked about dinner around the table. Yes, obviously we're human, and therefore the human connection is the easiest and strongest and the most
Mhm.
immediate and most obvious. But it's actually not enough.
Hmm.
And what we're taught is that it's all you need. But we are of nature and we're embedded in nature. What was it Chief Seattle said? If all the animals were gone, we'd die of a great loneliness of spirit.
Oh.
Beautiful quote.
Hmm.
We need to be in interaction with other beings other than human. That's one reason we have so many dogs and cats. We sense it, but
Hmm.
that's not enough.
Hmm.
Partly because they're domesticated, and partly because there's a whole universe of living beings out there.
Mm-hmm.
and we're of the earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know. I feel such a little, this is really small, but even in just in our backyard, if I see a toad in the summertime and I think, oh, I've made conditions that are good for a toad to be in my yard. I'm so happy, right? Like it's just such a little
Absolutely.
gift, I think.
No, I would take away the word little. Really, you're minimizing the importance of the connection.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
and from that toad's point of view, it's a big deal.
Hmm. Right. Yes. Yeah. We were gifted with baby possum. I mean, I live in the suburbs, but we had baby possums, we had baby squirrels, baby bunnies and owls, of course, then. So we have lots of things that you might not think about having in like the middle of a suburb, but there are lots of little places to look.
You can't escape it. In the cracks of the concrete, it's
Hmm.
in the clouds above, it's in the trees and the plants, the grasses, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. Um, Tell us a little bit more about the book. You said it has stories, and we'll definitely make sure that we have um, links for all of these things for the Earthfire Institute and for people to be able to find more information, of course. But tell us about the book a little bit.
It's called Whispers from the Wild, an invitation. And it's connected to what I was talking about, that all life wants to meet with life. So it's an invitation. But what it is a series of stories of animal I have lived with and experienced here. The wolf who recovered completely, the bear who recovered from paralysis completely, um, the, the connections that we can make, the joys of walking a badger. Now, again, I live with wild animals, but all these things are possible with semi-domestic and domestic animals as well. But I'm trying to expand our awareness of what's around us and the magic that's around us. So there are, the stories in there like putting a bear to bed, because every winter we have to put them to bed, and the
Right, of
process
course.
and the process it is, and it takes them 3 days to make their bed. And the little bear eyes get so sleepy. All you want to do is pick up the 600-pound bear and tuck it in. So there are elements of having lived with them that I can share that you don't ordinarily know. They're actually videos of this. We have an e-newsletter that we send out once a month, and that always has an animal story in it and videos, um, so that you can see the process of a bear making his bed. So cute. They're so careful, bringing in every single little piece of treasures, leaves and stuff to tuck their bed in and prepare themselves for the next 3 or 4 months. And then there's a bear we had who was developmentally disabled, who couldn't make his bed.
Hmm.
He learned eventually after a couple of cold winters and imitating the others. But those are some of the stories. Those would be some bear stories, for example,
Wow.
or a wolf who had an injury, and we had to rush him through the night to the other side of the state, and they were all frantic and, is he going to bite us, and
Mhm.
terrified, and who's going to be with him, etc. And my partner took him over there, and it was the middle of the night, and he had the wolf loose in the car because we had to rush to get them there because it was a total emergency, and the car we had wasn't big enough for a cage, so he was just loose in the car, which is fine because if you work with wolves enough, that's a capacity. So then he couldn't find a place in the middle of the night, so he called a cab, and he picked up the wolf and put him in the back of the cab and took him to the clinic. And the clinic was astounded. First of all, they're calmed to be right away because he saw him carrying this wolf from the
Mm.
cab in. And they said, "What a gentleman." And so there's a little story in this called Tanaka, the gentleman wolf takes a cab. The stories of Bluebell, the bison who almost started a water war because she was out in the pasture and we had a pump there, and she had an itch, and she decided she had to scratch her itch on the pump, and we
Uh-oh.
didn't realize it, and the water was rushing out for like 24 hours, and everything was dry, and we thought the wells, and John thought maybe the neighbors had done something. It's like she nearly started a water war. So he wired it shut so she could continue to scratch. So there are lots of
Well,
stories, and the stories that are on the more mystical end, like how on earth, what of the wolf healing it from energy, which is on there. She got distemper to her brain, which is 100% fatal, only it wasn't. Wild animals are different. They've got a passion to live, but stronger.
hmm.
Um, but she did get like the equivalent of epilepsy. She was all weird and stuff. And we did I said, I can't let that be. She's young. I'm not going to put her down. And if I put her on cortisone for the rest of her life, she'll die early. What can I do? So part of this is my own journey of discovery, because I started as a hardcore scientist, biologist,
Mhm.
and then psychology, but still science. And this energy stuff was new to me. All I knew is that I loved that wolf. She couldn't walk straight. She was young. I couldn't stand it. What could I do? So I asked someone who does craniosacral work, which is energy work. It's a whole field
Hmm.
of energy work, meaning connecting the nervous system, because that's what was wrong with her. Her nervous system was all screwed up. And she said yes, and this is what's on video. And she went to this strange place, the yurt where we have retreats, which she'd never been, the wolf, apricot, met this strange person with me and my partner there. Just for the hell of it, I grabbed a camera, and we settled the wolf down, and within moments, she understood what was happening. She lay down and accepted the energy healing. And I have
Hmm.
the camera directly on her eyes, and you can see her starting to go into a trance. And she lies there for like 45 minutes, sucking in the energy. And then she gets up, walks around, and comes back and asks for more. And after, none of this is magic, this is energy healing. And
Mhm.
after several sessions, after the first session, she was already brighter. But after many sessions, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months of them, she's completely healed.
Wow.
And again, I have medical records of this. So that's not that far out, sort of far out,
Hmm.
the idea of, and because my partner's knees were bad, we put her on a massage table. So you have this wolf lying voluntarily on a massage table, taking in this energy. Um, but more far out was how our bear was starting to get paralyzed and how he was healed. And that's just a great mystery. And I'll leave it to people if they want to look at it. It's on their website, but it's also in the book. And then
Okay.
how
Wow.
and then
Oh
how
my
he
goodness.
changed after he was healed. He changed.
Like his personality.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just a normal bear, friendly, but normal because bears aren't innately aggressive, um, unless they feel the need to be. And he would, after that, there was something about him, and I would never say anything to people who'd come to visit, and they would meet him and they couldn't tear themselves away. And
Hmm.
this isn't everybody, obviously, but often enough, they couldn't, and they'd sometimes just burst out crying, and they couldn't explain why, except something important had happened. Some kind of interaction from this bear whose face was so gentle.
Hmm.
It was just so gentle after he was healed. And a woman
Oh.
who does animal communication, we asked her about it, and she said after humans helped him, which is part of that whole story, he began to have the understanding that there was a connection possible between humans. They really could have a connection. Humans really could help. And the same thing happened with the cougar. Dramatic change once he felt like he was seen and safe,
Hmm.
helped. So I think a lot of the problems that we have, and this may seem far out to people, but I'll stand by it. Just like we need to be seen and
Hmm.
recognized in order to bloom and grow, babies who aren't seen and recognized develop all kinds of problems.
Hmm.
Life in general. If the animal is seen for who it is versus our idea of it, It feels the energetic
Mm,
connection of being seen for who it is rather than our idea of it, and
mm,
responds in kind.
mm-hmm. Well, that is very profound.
And what kind of life might we have if we knew that? That's why I
Mm,
can't stop. I can't stop sharing this
mm-hmm.
because it was
Yeah.
so beautiful for everybody.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad that we can hopefully share this with people that are listening to the show to have them learn a little bit more about what you've described. I mean, this is so amazing, these stories, and I can't wait to read more, to look at the videos, and we'll again make sure that everybody has links so that they can find you if they want to sign up for the newsletter and things like that. It sounds like they could really learn a lot, and really just like slowing down and connecting and all of the things that you just described.
It speaks to us deeply.
Yeah. Right. I
To
mean,
our
just in this
natural
time with
hearts.
you, it's like spoken to me like it's amazing. My head is just spinning to think about all the like incredible stuff that you just described, and
Connects with your heart.
yeah, yeah, right. Oh my gosh, this is great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else that you would
Pleasure.
like to talk about, or you want me to feature as well, or because I would love to just anything you want to tell us.
Are interested in the story sharing circles, there are registrations available on our website. If people
Okay.
want to contact me directly, that's fine.
Oh.
If Another book I'm working on is sharing stories of profound connections people have had in nature, because I think so many of us have had them and we forget them or hide them or tuck them away, or they're not that important. What's really important is business and money and etc. And these circles are to support. No, no, no. These connections are what's really true, living in the line of life. And so if people have stories they want to share with me, they can
Okay.
they can they can write me, they can call me. Um, I'm actually trying. I don't know if it's going to be possible. Trying to make a documentary of inviting people around the world to share these stories,
Oh,
so we can
wow.
sort of have a counter
Like all over the
energetic
planet.
push against the
Mm,
nihilistic
mm,
trees or a
mm,
piece of tissue paper to be cut down for our convenience, um, all that kind of stuff. That no, 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 no. There's treasure and magic everywhere. You only take what you need.
mm.
Um, so storytelling, story sharing. Sign up if you'd like for our e-newsletter. And the book is available, unfortunately, only on Amazon, um, because we don't have the resources to do
Mm,
otherwise.
mhm.
Um, and there are others with the same title, so it has to be. You have to add the Whispers from the Wild, an invitation, and my name.
An invitation. Okay.
And I'm working hard on making an audiobook available too.
Oh, good. Well, I hope that once you get your connections in nature, maybe you can come back and tell us about that too.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a delight talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been the Teaching Your Toddler podcast with Mary Jo Tinlin. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll find us on our website at teachingyourtoddler.com, as well as on Facebook at Teaching Your Toddler, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Teaching Toddler. So join us again, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much.